Yeah,
I hit record.
Yeah. Okay, we're now recording, guys, so swear away.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to let them in and just start chatting, or?
Yeah, works for me.
You guys ready if I let some people in?
Yep.
Or Toby, do you just want to see the number grow so you're satisfied?
There's more than us now, so it's fine.
Toby, I've never thought of you as a prima donna.
Wow.
Yeah,
go for it. I have to say, of all the backgrounds, Mark definitely has the best background. Looking for we need a branded background.
Toby, you're up to 18 now, so you're good. Yeah, morning everyone. We're just waiting for everybody to join, so we'll just give them a few minutes. We'll start at 12:02. We'll start at 12:02 to give everyone a chance to get in. Morning, Nick. Long time no see.
Yeah, how you doing, Daniel?
Yeah, fine. Morning, Paul.
Hello there.
How are you?
Very good here, thank you. How's everything there?
Can you hear us and see us okay? I think that's the most important thing.
All good, yeah.
We'll give it about 90 seconds or so. So yeah.
Good afternoon, all.
Afternoon, good to see you.
So we're just giving everyone a chance to join, so deal for arriving. And we will begin. Okay, yeah, good morning, everyone. Morning, actually, it's afternoon, what am I talking about? Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar for document management. Good enough isn't good enough. Marketing have been working hard on that. Just to explain kind of the plan here, so we're going to do a short presentation just to go through some of the context and the slides and the detail. And then we're going to do a demo today of the what used to be known as RepStore, or for many people who I know on this call already, used to be called RepStore, but it's now called Intapp, or in my head, RepStore Intapp, so then I know nobody gets confused. So I just call it both now. And it's really just to talk that through, and then we very kindly have Toby from Armstrong Watson here as well, just to talk about his experience later on. We are very big fan of cameras on, collaboration, questions. Normally I'd say I'm mute, but there's too many people here today for that. So if you want to just post your questions in the chat, that's absolutely fine, and then we will moderate those as we go through. And if we don't have time, please don't worry, we will follow up with you afterwards and go through that. So, but yeah, the more questions or comments or feedback, honestly, the best sessions like this is when people are talking to us and asking questions, and we want it to be interactive. We don't want it to be a one-way conversation. So I encourage all of you. I know lots of people on here I know aren't afraid to ask questions, so I encourage you. You know who you are. And any jokes also welcome occasionally. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, so thank you all for really taking the time. So that is the plan. So we'll crack on from there.
Just to note, the session is being recorded, but don't let that stop you from being frank in your feedback. So yeah, today is all about document management. Good enough isn't good enough, and we'll get into why that's the case a little later. Here's the agenda that we're going to be running through. So first of all, what are the actual challenges around DMS tools? Why is this worth looking at? How do you get the full potential out of your document management system? What are the problems? What are the pitfalls? Why is it so very often one of the big hamstrings for a practice in terms of driving efficiency? How do you enable robust document management within your practice? And I think that's very much twofold. It's the system itself, but it's very much how the people use it. And then we're fortunate to have Toby with us, who's going to give us insights onto their document management transformation project. And I definitely think that Toby's leading the way in their approach to technology. So I'm going to hand over to Daniel Teacher to go over the basics of IT and why document management is so important to an accountancy practice.
Thanks, Dan. So some of you may or may not have seen this slide, but we try and use this as often as we can. I guess this is our explanation of how to carry a practice from its early stages through to, you know, all of the sexy things around data and automation that we would like to talk about. And I think the reason we always start with this slide is it's about the business understanding what good looks like. So, you know, every practice I know in the country wants to be doing automation, wants to be doing Power BI, wants to be, you know, using robotics where they can, and wants to drive margin. But many people we meet haven't achieved the left-hand side of the graphic. So, you know, just to talk about that for a second, because, you know, there's no point building a very pretty house with a pretty roof and a pretty driveway and a pretty car if the foundations that it sits upon are not appropriate. And many firms that we meet, and again, I guess Toby's wider journey actually was very similar to this as well. He'll talk about it a bit later, but, you know, building the IT function on good foundations is critical. And just to explain what that means for a minute, you know, that's about making sure that you're a cloud-first business and that you're not relying on traditional hardware. It's about really using Office 365 to its potential, and we'll come back to that a bit more later on. It's about just having good quality support. You know, when people call, getting a timely response and having confidence in IT. You know, I meet so many practices where they're like, yeah, we've just stopped calling, we're fed up. And you know, just getting those basics right. And again, I still meet practices where not everybody has a laptop still, which to me is bonkers, if I'm honest. I can't understand how we can live in a post-corona era and not everybody just has a laptop to do their job. And then cybersecurity is a really big one. You know, we're now in a world where we're in the middle of the Ukrainian challenge, and there has been a huge amount of evidence from the US government showing state-sponsored attacks and an increase there. And as a small anecdote for you, actually, there's a hacking, what they call friendly hacker organization called Anonymous. You may or may not have heard of them, but they've actually launched attacks on Russia in response to Russia's behavior, which I thought was entertaining. But what it really shows you is that is the world that we now live in. And, you know, just because it's always been the same, going back to good isn't good enough, just because it's always been like that, that doesn't mean that that is okay anymore. You know, cybersecurity is moving at absolute light speed, you know, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for the people doing the hacking, by the way. I'm not talking about the people that sell the products. The people who do it make enormous amounts of money. And so they're very motivated to continue doing that. So that is really important. And then again, things like Teams and collaboration and Teams telephony and all of this good stuff, and cloud document management is what we'll come to later. They start to form the bedrock of the IT function. I see a lot of firms that are really hamstrung by, oh, we have to use Citrix, or we have to use remote desktop, or I can't work offline, or I can't work on my Mac, or I can't work on multiple devices. Simon's smiling. You know, and that's just a very common thing that we see. And so, you know, these tools allow you to move away from that world and from that model. And then once you have that in place, then you can really get into whether, if you ever want to describe IT as sexy, I do, you probably don't, but if you ever want to describe it as sexy, then you can get into the sexier stuff. So, whether it be systems integration or analytics or robotics or automation, there is, so many accountants talk about, we sit on piles of data and we do nothing with it. How many firms can run an event? I was talking about it this morning just internally. How many firms can run an event where they know which of their clients have a turnover of £10 million, are in the tech sector and are not claiming an R&D tax claim? That would be a great event to run. Let's get 100 tech firms in a room who aren't claiming R&D tax credit and sell them it. It's the easiest sell in the world, isn't it? But so many firms just don't have the data to ask those kind of questions and to do those kind of things. Or talking to someone else yesterday about cross-sell and upsell, having good data to do that as well is really, really important. And so, that all comes later down the line, but you've got to start with good foundations.
Yeah, so one of the cornerstones of good foundations is having your document management system set up correctly and everybody using it correctly. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Document management, good enough isn't good enough. So one piece of work that I do quite a lot of is practice reviews. So travel around the country or on teams, meeting with practices, talking to their people, interviewing them, finding out how they work. And time again, one of the recurring themes from every practice I speak to is that document management is one of the big gripes. And it's not something you can entirely blame on the users. You can't entirely blame it on the employees, because document management systems, legacy document management systems, are quite buggy, and they present all sorts of problems. Like the search function isn't all that great. It's not like Google, or it's not like the search within SharePoint or on your desktop where it presents you with the things that you want instantly. It can be pretty slow to navigate. Just logging all of your interactions with your customers, that can be quite a cumbersome process. In fact, many practices that I talk to, they don't really log their interactions with customers in their document management system because there's such a barrier to doing that. And that means that if a partner leaves or a mid-level manager moves on, all of their interactions with the customer are in their email rather than in the document management system. And so you've got this hassle of having to actually log into somebody else's email to actually see what the conversation was with the client. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more going on with document management. So I'd appreciate it if you folks have a bit of a think about what are the challenges that you have with your document management system, and either chuck it in the chat, or feel free to interrupt at any point, or pop your hand up. Teams has got lots of functionality, and share with the group your views on document management and what's hamstringing you as a practice. So why is document management so very important? So firstly, data security. You've got a lot of customer data on your systems, and what we do still see a lot of is people storing those documents just on a shared network drive. And that obviously sucks just in terms of being able to collaborate with your colleagues on the documents that are stored there. You've got the classic file structure just like it was back in Windows 95. Nothing's really moved on since then. But then the real issue is that securing those drives is a lot more of a challenge than if you've just chucked your credit card into one of the modern cloud systems that are inherently secure, have been put in a billion-dollar data center. That the security around retaining and holding your customer documents is very, very important to your credibility as a practice. Then the second piece, your employees, I guarantee this is happening, your employees will be emailing documents back and forth with their customers, and then they'll receive a document to their corporate email, and they can't actually access it because it's not the right kind of file type. So they'll then email it to their personal email address, and then they can open up the PDF because it's just on their iPhone or whatever device. And this sort of thing is happening all the time in the background. So you need to ensure that if people are accessing documents on their personal devices, if they have their corporate email on a personal device, that is all secure. And if they're sending those emails back and forth on their mobile phone with their customer, those interactions are being logged in the document management system. Because how can you collaborate with your colleagues? How can you get the benefits of having a wider team if your colleagues can't access that record of the customer interaction? And that comes on to the third point here about the system having to be intuitive, being easy to use. You know, you often see this on large campuses where you have concrete paths or tarmac paths everywhere, and then you'll have this sort of muddy path right across the grass where hundreds of people have chosen not to walk on the concrete paths. They've picked their own desired path. Well, we have exactly the same problem in the IT world within accountancy practices. You know, the paths that have been created, actually that's not the optimal route. The optimal route is straight across the grass there. And so people aren't using the systems in the way that they've, thanks Jeremy, people aren't using the systems in the way that they've been designed to be used. So you've definitely got to train people, you've got to enforce correct usage, but create the right path in the first place. You know, that's where your primary effort should be spent.
Just to add a point that I've seen quite a lot recently, I'm happy to open this up to discussion if people would like, but if not, don't worry. For me, I also have really honed in on recently that working papers and the client file are different places. And for me, that doesn't make any sense. So we keep seeing clients where they've got a shared drive where all the working papers go, and then they're running ABC legacy document management system. They would actually keep the working papers there if they thought it was convenient, but because it's so clunky, they end up just saying, oh, do you know what, we'll just save the final version of the year-end accounts in the actual client file on ABC system, from ABC dinosaur vendor. Yeah, and for me, that's like, then you're ending up actually with two filing locations. And then the other thing I see that's also, and so you end up with duplication there, and it's just harder for the users. The other thing that I see also is just email filing, where again, on some of the legacy products, if one person emails files an email in the system, you don't even, unless you go and check the system, you don't know that they filed it. So you end up with duplicate filing that's going on all the time as well. And then also the other thing that I see also is that you can only file the email when you're logged into the ABC system. You can't do it off your phone. You can't sometimes do it off your laptop. You may have to be logged into a certain way of working, which again, lots of people find very restrictive. And then that leads back to Dan's analogy, which is, well, if it's too hard, I'm just not going to do it very well. And then you end up, you know, when somebody leaves, how often do people have a conversation of, oh, can I have access to their inbox? Well, you shouldn't actually need that, yeah? Because all of their documents relating to client matters, at least, should be in the document management system, not living in people's inboxes, but they live there because it's convenient. And then also how many people end up with a list of folders in their Outlook of clients and then are filing the emails that way as well, because again, it's convenient. So I think, you know, these are all very, very common things that I see. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to thumbs me up or comment, but yeah. No.
But it'd be great to hear from you folks what you regard as your key challenges with document management systems. Toby, this is obviously something that's been near and dear to your heart for a while. I think you've looked at the challenges from every possible angle. Why did you actually start looking at document management? You know, the world's a bigger place. There are other projects you could have done. Why was it this one?
Well, it's quite interesting for us because I was actually employed originally 12 years ago to implement document management within the firm. And back then, everything that Daniel and you have spoken about really is what we were after. Collaboration. For me, the biggest thing is working. You should be working where you're storing your information, and by that I mean you should never write something and then copy it somewhere else. You should always start working in the right place, and that reduces the friction, I think, moving forwards. And that's where we started, and it helped us to be able to move work around offices more effectively, better compliance trails and all the rest of it. What led us to Intapp was, I guess 10 years later, the world had changed, and the challenge that we had was that our users were asking more and more and more for a seamless working experience. I don't know if you remember, but 2 or 3 years ago, there was a whole load of adverts on TV done by Microsoft about how wonderful the new Office 365 platform was. And to be honest, Dan, I got bored with people emailing me saying, I've just seen this TV advert. Why is my working day not like that? And that's really where we kicked in and started speaking to Intapp. That, and obviously the other key one is cost. So like Daniel said, the key to moving forwards is a good foundation. We changed our foundation, moved our servers into Azure, and moved on to the Office 365 platform. And at that point, cost became the biggest driver for us. So yeah, I guess they're the key challenges that we've seen so far.
There's some excellent comments that come in the chat. Appreciate that, Toby. So from Ryan, the time spent saving, that's absolutely an issue, having to either drag and drop an email or go through the whole save process. That's pretty frustrating. The way that email threads are being saved, comment from Julia, and poor search functions. So another very common problem is that when you do save an email into your document management system, your colleague might be brilliant as well, and they save it too. And so you have two of exactly the same email, or two save instances of a conversation at different moments in the chain. So that the legacy document management systems don't deduplicate automatically, rather frustrating. Comment from Jeremy about the issues that the document management systems sit separately. And so there's another database with another portal with another set of logins. That creep of touch points is happening to every practice. Sometimes you go to a practice's website and you'll click on the tab on their website that says customer portal, and then it's got a drop down with 6, 7, 8 different things. You've got the login for this and for that and the other, and that's just not an optimal customer experience. So you've got to stick these things together with one eye on the time. Just very quickly, this is the vision. Many of you have seen this before, but this is the vision for how to employ Office 365 within your practice. I'm going to do this very quickly in 30 seconds. Your practice management system should be connected to Office 365. Office 365 forms the spine of your practice. That means that when you've got your document management, which then is connected to SharePoint, and Mark will explain how beautifully that's done in a moment, that's connected to SharePoint, meaning that when your practice management system creates a new customer instance within SharePoint, all of the documents can start being saved there automatically. All of your interactions through Outlook can go directly into SharePoint, and they're very neatly arranged by Intapp. It's a very, very neat system. And it means that, for example, you've got CCH or Digita or Iris all sitting on Azure, but because they're connected, because they're actually being joined together with Office 365, all of these cloud applications that do work really nicely and are open and friendly with other applications, all of the information in there that can be shared with CCH, etc., with your compliance apps, and all that information can then be surfaced in Power BI. So you can start actually doing some real reporting, both for your practice on how it's being run, so you don't have static reports anymore, and also to your customers on the state of their business. So that's in a nutshell how you should be thinking about Office 365.
Just one point before you move on. Yeah, the other thing I think, again, I often say to people, and it sounds obvious, but I think it's important to identify is 90% or maybe even higher now % of businesses already have Office 365. So you're already paying for this functionality. You already have the license for a lot of it. You've already been through the. Jeremy is vehemently agreeing. Like you already have it. Yeah, and I'll just tell you a small anecdote from a client of mine. They have a legacy document management system, and they're now migrating into Intapp. And it says to me, the IT team said, "Oh, the IT team said, oh, we don't have SharePoint, we don't have OneDrive, we've got a document management system." And I said, "Oh, really?" So I ran a report, and through lockdown, because the business had been using OneDrive and Teams, there were 1 million documents in Office 365, 1 million. Okay, so IT were like, "Oh yeah, everyone's using our document management system," and the business were like, "No, we're not." That is the reality that you live in. I think one just last thing to add that is really important point, and Mark will touch on this, but it's a really important point, is if you don't have something like Intapp, because this is the reverse, what you find is what Dan calls Teams sprawl. And what that means is if you don't put a structure on top of SharePoint and OneDrive and Office 365, people will just go and create channels. People will just go and create SharePoint sites. People will just go and create stuff everywhere because there are no rules of engagement and there is no automated structure of doing it. And then you just end up with stuff everywhere. Stuff in people's OneDrive, stuff in random team site, people leave the company, it's in their personal area, just like an email, you get lost. And so, there you go, Ryan is vehemently agreeing as well. So, for me, one of the really valuable things about Intapp is it actually provides structure and governance to Office 365. Otherwise, it just becomes this playground where everyone can do, you know, whatever they like. Strong eye on the time. Should we segue straight on to
Mark, it's all yours.
Mark?
Cheers, guys.
So we could go on all day, so I apologise.
Yeah, but you're eating into some of my key points, Daniel. So you're still.
Yeah, that's good. We're aligned. We're aligned.
I was trying to mute you there. So my name is Mark. I'm practice group leader for accounting within Intapp. So I just got to run you through a few slides, and then I'll move into the product demonstration. So, and again, some of this has already sort of been touched on already. What we're finding right now within the accounting industry, and I deal with many firms, is that they find themselves at a pivot point. You know, you probably already have invested heavily in Microsoft 365. You might not know it, but you have. And this is either part of your business as usual cycle or as a response to the pandemic, because a lot of people are like, okay, well, now I have to work from home. And in parallel, they've now started to weigh up their options when considering moving their key systems to the cloud. You know, so that's another big aspect. Moving to the cloud is not a simple affair. So the question is do you continue to invest in the systems that you currently have today, which might not all be well connected, or can you start to fully embrace Microsoft 365 as a core component of your cloud strategy? Now, the challenge for accounting firms has been that although Microsoft 365 has unparalleled platform in terms of all the features and functionality that it can provide, it's not a turnkey solution for accountancy firms, and that does put people off. People just want to come in and work the way they're used to working. So Intapp collaboration and content, which is what I'm showing you today, is primarily focused on providing products and services that help accounting firms fully exploit your investment in Microsoft 365 and try and accelerate that adoption to Microsoft 365. So what we provide is an application layer that sits on top of your own Microsoft 365 tenant that then leverages that underlying storage and capability that Daniel sort of alluded to with SharePoint. But then what we do is we deliver those accounting use cases such as document management and collaboration, and then we seamlessly integrate the tools and applications your users already know how to use, like Outlook, like Office, etc. So our primary offerings at present are Intapp Documents, which is focused on the Outlook user experience, which is what I'm going to demonstrate today. And then we have Intapp Workspaces, which is our team solution, which we can cover at a later point. And we also provide client collaboration as well. So those client portals, and at the minute that's currently in beta. But today we're going to focus on Intapp Documents. Now the key highlights with the solution I'm going to show you today is the functionality around automation of workspaces. We don't want partners or staff having to go and think about how a folder is created, what's the structure of this folder. What we do is this should all be driven through an automated process based off predefined templates, and within these predefined templates there are agreed standardized folder structures, agreed standardized security permissions, governance policies, so that you don't really need to think about it. This then builds out onto SharePoint, which gives you that enterprise document management system functionality. And the next thing we offer to help with your user adoption is around assisted email filing. We have an inbuilt machine learning system to make suggestions of where users should file emails and documents within your system, just to get information from A to B as quickly as possible. And finally, a key component of what we do is around managing the life cycle of engagements from start to finish. And this is a concept that you might not always have had within your existing document management systems. It's tracking how an engagement is transitioning through the process, putting a project or an engagement on hold, closing it off, archiving it. How are you notifying people that what's occurring within these particular jobs without having to wait for somebody to send you an email at some point? So we try and automate all of this process as much as possible. And with Intapp Documents, what we are essentially doing is surfacing the enterprise level document management system, which is SharePoint, and adding capability that bridges the gap between what SharePoint does out of the box and what accounting firms need to do to be effective DMS. We do all of this in a way that is easy to adopt by integrating directly into places where accountants work, such as Outlook and Office. And I think somebody raised that before. I think that's what Toby was saying. You know, you want to, your document management system should be where your users work. Other things that we're doing in this space, you know, integrating into practice management systems so that that becomes the upstream system, becomes the trigger for creating those SharePoint spaces. So there's a lot of things that we can do here with integrating to your existing systems. And then partners and staff are then able to subscribe and unsubscribe to workspaces directly from within their Outlook without having to go out into other systems. And again, I saw one of the comments and the questions, somebody was talking about metadata management, and this is something that we're really strong at. You know, it's very difficult if you're using a file share to capture metadata at source. You know, how can you prompt people to think about, you know, what information do I need to capture before I create this workspace? This is all going to help me go back and search and find for this later. And this, what you'll see in the demo, is something that we're quite good at. And then what also sets us apart is Intapp Documents provides users with a choice in how they want to interact with client engagement content, irrespective of where they edit content. All changes are reflected seamlessly across all experiences for all users. So if you're using your mobile device, if you're using Outlook, or if you're using Microsoft Teams, which is another product that we have, Intapp Workspaces, everything is all aligned. And I'm not going to go into a product demo of Intapp Workspaces today, but you know, some of the things that we try and address with Teams is in around that governance of Microsoft Teams. Teams sprawl is a real issue. It's grown exponentially, you know, as more and more people are starting to use it, you know, with working from home. That becomes a very noisy experience for a lot of users and can ultimately put you off. Where is your information being stored? How is that being controlled and managed? You know, there's a lot of risk associated with that, and you need to get a handle on it. Integrations to different line of business systems that you have. You know, Teams is a very powerful tool for integrating to third-party systems. It makes it a lot easier, giving you that single pane of glass view for your entire firm. And some of the things that we do around that is in around sort of Teams templates, and we do that all automatically. And then, as I mentioned about the governance and control around Teams. So another key aspect of what we do is when a team is closed off, we manage the life cycle of Microsoft Team as well. Whenever that's closed off, we can do things like automatically delete that team, archive that content out of the system and into a different SharePoint location. But then we also deliver to your partners and staff a user experience that's very familiar to them. But we also introduce structure to Teams, because Teams is a little bit of a big bucket. And what we do with our Intapp hubs is we start to introduce hierarchies and allow you to split out different teams into different service lines to make it really easy to navigate around your system. We're going to pop out to a product demo. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'll just pause very quickly. If not, we can move into the demo.
There was one in the chat, Mark, if you saw that, about legacy documents.
I didn't see it, no. Sorry, could you read out?
Yes, I'll just read it out. There's two things. I'll read them out for you. Can we stop users duplicating previous documents that are in an old format?
I believe so. I think I might be able to cover that as part of the demo.
Okay, and then Toby, do you want to explain your point? Given it.
Sorry, okay. So I was just going to point out that one of the most important things with the Teams integration for me is that archiving piece that Mark was talking about. One of the challenges that we have is that we don't want to encourage our users to use the chat function within a team to talk about work, because we aren't able to hold that as an audit trail so that we can understand how we came to our decisions. With the archiving tool with the Teams, what it does is actually takes that entire chat history and archives that into your workspace. into your client workspace. So you have that full audit trail, which means that you can suddenly start thinking about moving that communication off email and into Teams, which is very much how people seem to want to work at the moment. But it might be a bit of a technical point, but it really, we found that very, very useful.
Yeah. Thanks, Toby.
And then there was just one last one. Is the hierarchy easy to tidy up for legacy teams sprawl? Probably, do you want to answer that one, Mark?
Yeah, there is a process that we can support you with doing that. You know, it's one of those things that we'd have to look at under the hood just to see what you're doing and see what we can then bring in under the control of our product, which would be Intapp Workspaces. But we do see that quite a lot with our clients, you know, obviously now especially, you know, if you came, we've had this product on the go for years now, and if you came to me 3 or 4 years ago, you know, a lot of people, you know, I use Skype, I don't use Teams, you know, and now with the pandemic, it just exponential growth within it, you know, and the problem we've seen is a lot of our clients that we go into have a lot of teams. So we do spend a little bit of time working with them, advising them as to best practices and how we can bring that under the control of our product.
Conscious of time, Mark, so yeah,
okay,
crack on.
Yeah. Okay, so on my screen you can see my Outlook. And again, from a partner within a firm or a staff member within a firm, you know, the first thing you'll do in the morning is you'll boot up your Outlook. And what we want to do is make sure that where your people work is where they do their filing and where they access their documents and all in one place. So Outlook now becomes your 360-degree view of your engagements, your emails, your communications with the clients. And you can see here that we're integrated into 2 areas within Outlook. One of them at the top here, and with this area is how I'm going to access all of the engagements within my firm. This is where I will add on new engagements. This is where I'll manage the life cycle of engagements. And then along the left-hand navigation window here, you'll see that I've got a folder structure in place. This is my work in progress area. And one of the nice things that we do here is you know, no matter how many engagements you have, we like to use this as an on-demand pull-through from the document management system, SharePoint, as opposed to just presenting users with hundreds and hundreds of folders here, which then just becomes noise, runs the risk of misfiling, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off and just show you, you know, if I'm a partner in the system and I want to go in and I want to look at all of the engagements within my firm, I just go up to my little My Engagements icon. I click My Engagements, and this is going to bring up the Intapp Documents dashboard. And within this dashboard, we have multiple views. So one of the key things that we're able to do here is we can use the metadata that we're capturing at source. And what we do is we slice and dice that information up to present you with multiple different views. So here I've got, these are all of the engagements within my firm, but I can break these out and say, I only want to look at the audit engagements. I only want to look at the tax engagements or the advisory engagements, etc. And this is completely configurable to how you want this to look. So the idea being is that you're able to very quickly find what you need to find within a click, as opposed to, you know, as a traditional file plan, you know, you might have a client folder, you then have a folder within folder within folder. One of the big challenges of doing that is whenever you have folders within folders within folders, there's documents within those folders that might need to live in different places. And, you know, if you have a structure whereby it's living in folders, that you ultimately end up with 2 copies of the same document in different places. With SharePoint, we don't have to do that. Everything's stored in a single place, so you're always working from a single source of truth. And how we make it easy for you to group and break these things up is just through metadata. So if I go into my engagements here, I've got a client called Condoso. I'm currently working on a tax audit for 2022. If I'm a partner, I might say to myself, actually, do you know what? I want to go look at what I did last year. So I come down the list, I can search for for my engagements, I can use advanced search, which will bring up all of the metadata fields. So I can search on client partner, I can search on external members, etc. So really easy for me to search across my thousands of engagements. In this case, I can see that I want to quickly go back and look at audit 2021. All I do is I just simply hit the subscribe button, and that now moves into my engagements, which is my work in progress area. So these are all of the engagements that I'm currently actively working on. Now what's going to happen is that I've subscribed to that. You can see here that the audit 2021 folder has now started to synchronize into my work in progress area within my Outlook. And it's that quick and it's that simple to do. And if I just scroll out, you can see that I've got my folders. All of my emails are starting to synchronize down, and my documents, etc. So very easy for users to go out, pin a work in progress engagement, but it's also just as easy for me to say, okay, I'm finished with this engagement. I'm going to unpin that. And what that will do is that now sets that folder to be removed from my Outlook. So it's an on-demand feature that keeps this area nice, clean, tidy, so I'm not distracted by other things within the system. All make sense? Another thing that we do with these engagements is we have the ability to manage the life cycle of an engagement. And this is probably a different concept to what you might be used to currently at the minute. So through a set of statuses, which are all completely configurable, we can drive notifications, updates to reporting systems, all behind the scenes automatically, so that you can keep track of where the engagement is within a particular stage. So for example, I'm currently working on this tax audit. I may be a staff member. I've just got an email from a client to say that they need sign off internally, and I hit confirm. So what I'm now doing is I'm now tagging this to an audit trail behind the scenes to say that this engagement has been put on hold, and then that all feeds back into our narrative window here. So if I'm a partner and I need to get a quick update before I go into a client meeting to find out what's currently happened within an engagement, all I need to do is go into my engagements, click on the narrative button, and they have a full timeline of all the activity and all the events that have currently happened within this engagement. So whenever I go into the client, I've got my little cliff notes ready to go. Another thing that we're able to do with this system is manage the metadata associated with this engagement. So any document, any email that we file against this engagement in SharePoint will get tagged with this metadata. And again, this is completely configurable to whatever fields and properties that you want to have within your organization. That's part of our implementation process. We'll sit down with you, we'll agree on the specific metadata that you want to add into the system, and that will be applied at the back end of the system. So that's a little bit just around about how we access engagements, how we pin the engagements into our work in progress.
Mark, do you want to answer the question from Ryan briefly?
Oh, sorry, I can't see the questions come up.
Fine, I'll read it out. Can the status, so it says, can the status be matched to PE? So PE has jobs, etc., etc. So can that be matched between the two?
Yeah, we have a very comprehensive API, which is an open API. We also have a native Power Automate connector, so we can integrate to most systems. The system's very flexible. It's a platform that essentially gets tailored around how each firm works, and then we can actually bring that further. It can be tailored how each service line works as well. So I'm just going to jump out to my Outlook, and I'm just going to show you a little bit more around the sort of filing process and what that looks like. So within the system here, you can see I've got a number of emails. You can see that I've got my my tax audit, and you can see I've got my folder structure. So I'm working with Joe Chang on this audit. I can see that he sent me 3 emails. For me to get this email from my Outlook into this folder, it's very simple. I can just drag and drop that email in, which takes a couple of seconds. Or what I can do is I can right click, hit quick file, and this brings up our filing assisted dialog box. And this is really handy if I'm working on maybe 10 or 15 engagements at a time, and I need to very quickly file an email or document into SharePoint. So here what I can do is I can search for it using the name, but you'll also see here that we've got recent locations, favorite locations, and another added feature that we have within Intapp Documents is our predictive filing engine. So this is using machine learning and textual analysis to learn the filing behavior of each user. And over time, it will start to make accurate predictions as to where I should file my email. So in this case, it's saying correspondence, which is correct. And I just hit copy. Now, we talked about this at the beginning. Dan had mentioned about, we want to make sure that everyone's working from a single source of the truth. We're not duplicating effort. We're not duplicating emails, because again, that just runs into risk of people opening up the wrong thing. So even within our system, we have duplication detection, and you can see here that our system's detected that there's a similar email already been filed into this location. It's because it's part of my demo system. I've been filing quite frequently in here. So it'll prompt me to go in and decide what I want to do with this email. So in this instance, I'm just going to discard the duplicate items, and I'm going to file that email. Now, another nice feature of what we do is obviously whenever we're working on engagements, especially within accountancy firms, there's always going to be more than one person working on an engagement at any one time. So you'll maybe have a partner overseeing it. You may have a manager, you may have a junior member of staff working on this. If we all receive the same email, and I happen to be the first one to do anything with this email, and I file it, I'll file that email into that location. But if we all receive the same email, all of the other users will receive a notification. This email will be tagged in their inbox to say that this email has been filed, and it'll also show a link to where that email has been filed to. So again, this is to ensure that we're not duplicating effort here and adding things that shouldn't be added. Filing documents is just as easy. I can drag and drop that straight into the documents area. I can right click, I can quick file attachments, and what that will do is that will actually strip off the email and just file a document. You can see here that our predictive filing engine is making an accurate suggestion to say that this should be filed in the documents area. And again, if I go to hit save here, you can see our duplication detection is popping up and saying, hey, this looks like a similar document to something that's already in here. So we're capturing this stuff at source. So I'm just going to add this as a new version, and that's how easy it is to file emails and file documents into our
Mark,
yeah.
2 questions for you. Sorry, they're both very relevant.
Well,
one is, how do you know whether you wanted to discard a duplicate for sure? So I saw on the document there it gave you the compare option. I guess the real question is, what's the basis of the duplicate? Is it the content of the email or the subject, or how does it know?
So it's using the content of the email, and what the sort of areas where we see this happening is if you're offline. So we have offline capability as well, and we'll have a little, so it didn't show up in this demo, but we have a little notification that will allow you to compare before you actually file into that location within the system.
Yeah, Mark, let's move on. I think we need to hand over to Toby in a couple of minutes. So, yeah,
okay. Yeah, no worries. So just very quickly, I'll just move on to, and then sending emails, it's just as easy. So if I just add in some information, attach a document. So here, this is now an engagement-centric way of accessing all of your documents and information. Uses our filing assistant dialog box. We also have the option just to add links, and this is especially important when you're working internally. We want to make sure that we're all working from the single source of the truth. So I'm just going to hit add links, and this email is now ready to go to Lynn Robbins. Whenever I hit send, our filing assistant dialog box incepts that email, and it's now prompting me to say, hey, Mark, where do you want to file this email? And again, I've got my predictive filing engine, I've got all my recent locations, and I can just hit send and file. If this is a personal email and I just want to send it without filing, I have the option to send only. Another option that we have is a feature called send and tag or luggage tagging. And what this does is this puts a unique identifier onto this email so that whenever anyone replies to this email with that tag on it, it will automatically be filed into that location. I just hit send a file, and you can see here, this is the tag that comes up. So anyone who replies to this email, that email will automatically be filed into that corresponding folder. Now, from a user's perspective, whenever I want to go in and interact with the emails and documents within SharePoint, you can see they get a very native Outlook experience, and this helps massively with user adoption. So it's very hard for people to tell the difference of where Outlook begins and where Intapp document ends, and you want that because you want that for user adoption. Likewise, with documents, you can see here I've got a number of documents in within the document management system. I have a scroll preview feature. I can check this document out, and whenever I check this document out, behind the scenes is checking the document out from SharePoint. If I were to make a quick edit here and I close this off and hit save, that's going to check that document back in. But when it checks the document back in, you'll see that the version number automatically changes. At any point, what I can do within the system is I can go back and look at the previous versions of this document. You get a full history of it. I can then click on this button and I can restore to a previous version within a couple of clicks. But the key here is that we will only ever show you the latest version of the document. We won't show you version 1, 2, 3, 4, because that runs a risk to somebody opens the wrong document, but they're all there in the back end of the system. And then another feature that we have is if we're collaborating on a document together, we have this co-authoring mode, which is leveraging the capability of SharePoint. And essentially what this is doing is this is checking the document out behind the scenes and co-authoring, so more than one person can now come in and edit this document behind the scenes within the system. And then another thing that we have within our system is we have the ability to search across for all of these emails and documents along all of these folders, but we also have the ability to go across and search online, and this will search across all of the SharePoint tenant. And the key here is that none of your users will ever have to leave Outlook to get access to an email or a document.
The other very quick one I'll just talk about is also, I'm a big fan when you open a document that there's an edit online button, which then allows you to just use the native, is that the collaboration? The native SharePoint one. I'm personally a much bigger fan of that, because then the auto save in the top corner goes on and everyone can work all at the same time. I'm not personally a fan of checking stuff out, but yeah.
That's edit on.
Yeah, we definitely need to hand over to Toby unless there's anything else quickly from you, Mark.
No, that's me.
Thank you, really helpful. And thank you everyone for all the questions. We'll have to pick up some of them afterwards because I promised Toby his slot, so I don't want to overrun. So
yeah, smashing. Thanks for that, Mark. So Toby, you've done a successful implementation of this technology. How would you say that your people within the practice adapted to using a new system? That can always be a sticky one.
Yeah, it certainly can. So we did use document management before, so people were used to it. I've seen that there's quite a lot of people here that are probably using VC or other document management systems. It wasn't that difficult to move, if I'm honest. We rolled this out right in the middle of lockdown. So we weren't able to do any of our traditional classroom sessions or anything like that. We did it all on Teams, which meant that we had to limit the length of time that we train people because people get really bored after an hour or so. So we essentially did a little bit of, in the last system you did it like this, in the new system you do it like this. But to be honest with you, because it all sits within Outlook, it's fairly straightforward to do. The biggest challenges, I think, are probably the classic ones of how do I pin a workspace, how do I search for a document, and how do I file? But again, all of those things were pretty straightforward once we got into it. It was good. It's been pretty simple. I would echo Daniel's comments, incidentally, about edit online. And I would also point out that that is a configuration option in Intapp. And if you open a document in Armstrong Watson, it automatically opens as edit online for very much the reasons that Daniel said. I think that those things, though, because it's natively Office, that makes life so much easier for everybody.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you. And any top tips for a practice that's looking to embark on a project like this?
So I guess it depends where you are in your document management lifecycle. If you don't have a document management system at the moment and you're using a file system, then it's quite a boring subject, but the taxonomy of the way in that you actually file your documents is really important. Mark mentioned the value, one of the key values that, or key benefits that Intapp brings is templated workspaces, and that is a massive problem in SharePoint. So you might think to yourself, oh well, I can go off and do this in SharePoint by myself and I don't really need RepStore to do it. But the key challenge is avoiding that sprawl, and we talked about it with Teams. It's exactly the same with SharePoint. Having a templated approach is key. Now we're quite draconian in Armstrong Watson, and I mandate what the folders are in most of our workspaces. Obviously, like the rest of us, there's only so many places there's only so many folders you need in a accounts file for 2022, really. Similarly with a personal tax file. So we lock a lot of those down, but that makes it very simple for everybody to be able to find where they're going to put it. And my key piece of advice there is don't have a very big folder structure. What was expenses today is costs tomorrow when you look at it. So you're better off having a really simple structure and using the search functionality to find it. Yeah.
Just to answer Asma's question that just came through there, is it cloud-based? Yes, absolutely. You probably shouldn't be looking at any technology that isn't cloud-based. It's just going to be a headache in the coming years.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dan, because I think one of the things that we struggled with a little bit is, or I struggle with my fellow partners, is everybody wants to use an iPad all the time. And that's a real challenge. And we use, because it's SharePoint, you can access, because Intapp is SharePoint, we can access everything via the Office app, for example. That's really good. But with the Teams integration, that means that we can natively support all of our partners working on iPads, on Macs, on anything else, and they're still able to see the same documents and information as everybody else, and that's anywhere in the world at any time.
Yeah, I also think it's worth noting, just appreciate it's a minor technical point, but a lot of people here use it. There is no need for VPN or logging in or anything like that. You just turn your laptop on in the morning, open Outlook, and you're there. I think that's also a very, time to value, super quick. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, what would you say the quick wins were, Toby?
So Mark will kill me, but actually, Daniel's point, document collaboration. If you spoke to my business now, 90% of the users would say the greatest thing that they have is seamless document collaboration. So all of those spreadsheets that you update with WIP and with work in progress and where we are with chasing leads and all of those things that we need to run the business, multiple people can go and access those at the same time. And the fact that happens seamlessly from within Intapp is the key. Our previous document management system would allow that functionality, but you ended up in a situation where you had to go through several steps to prepare the document to get it into collaboration mode, whereas with Intapp, it's just open the document and it's there.
Anything a bit longer term, wins that you've seen since that?
Well, Teams will be a big one, because what that will enable us to do longer term is shift our communication off email and into Teams channels. So we have a team for every matter that we work on, and the chat, which is why I made the point about it archiving the chat in the channel. All of that, it means that the manager and the senior and the partner can all communicate in the same place. There is no filing of emails when you do that, so that's saving you another couple of clicks every time you do anything. It's seamless, it's already there, and you get access to the documents straight away. So we're working up to that. Our forensic accounting team are currently using Teams at the moment. They really like it. They really like the fact that there's a OneNote integration into the back end of Teams, so that they have a OneNote describing what the job is and what the goals are. The partner goes in and explains what they want to happen in that job, and away they go. And it works really well for that advisory service offering. We're exploring how that's going to work with our more compliance-based stuff at the moment. But Teams will be the biggest win.
Nice.
Okay. I guess having said the biggest win, the other one is we're using Repstore to generate our client portal as well. And that
Right.
again, it's difficult as the IT person. Well, one of the IT people on the call, I guess it's very easy to skip over the benefits of this Intapp being based on Office 365. It's not like Virtual Cabinet or iManage or all those others which have a separate database which sits outside and then integrates into. Intapp is natively part of it. So when we spin up a SharePoint site to be our client portal, that's within Outlook, but it also means that all of the functionality that Microsoft provides for client portals is natively there. And with the best will in the world, Microsoft has way more developers than Intapp does, or Virtual Cabinet, or iManage, and they're always working on trying to improve that. So,
yeah, you're definitely putting your money on the right horse, aren't you, when you're building your business on Microsoft?
Well, there used to be an adage, Daniel will tell you, 15, 20 years ago, that was no IT director got fired for buying IBM. And it feels a little bit like that with Microsoft. And to echo Daniel's original point, both of your points, everybody's paying for Office 365 licenses, and that's a really new thing for us. I don't know about the rest of the firms on the webinar, but we had a perpetual license before we switched to Office 365. The last license that we'd bought was in 2012. So as far as seeing costs in the business was concerned, there were no costs for Microsoft Office licenses. The minute we moved to Office 365, which you're going to have to do, that meant that we suddenly had to start justifying that office expenditure. And that's one of the key things that prompted us to move forwards, because Office 365 is really expensive if you don't use all the bits and pieces. But with your Office 365 license, you get free SharePoint space. So you're not actually paying for the storage of this stuff. And if you need to buy extra storage, it's not that much money. So yeah, it's a very powerful business case for me.
Conscious of time, what we'll do is, so just a big thank you to Toby for all your insights and anecdotes, and Mark for the demo, and Dan as well for his piece. So thank you so much for everyone for interacting. Lots of chat going on, which is really, really great. Lauren put something in the chat if you want to talk to us afterwards. There's a link, but we'll reach out to you regardless. But what we'll do is, I don't know if Toby you can, Mark, but myself and Dan will hang on the line metaphorically for a few minutes afterwards. And if you just want to stay and ask a few more questions or have a conversation about anything, we'll hang around for a couple of minutes. But if you need to go, I appreciate it is 1:01, but yeah, you're welcome to stay. If not, thank you so much all for taking the time and coming today. I thought it was really, really helpful. Really good, guys. So thank you so much.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks.
And if you're staying, feel free to unmute.
Hi, yeah, I've got a question for the ones that